Purpose, a caring approach to business.
Welcome, everybody!
Not the world, not what's outside of us, but what we hold inside traps us. We may not be responsible for the world that created our minds, but we can take responsibility for the mind with which we create our world. Words by the incredible Gabor Mate. Welcome to Pollinating Purpose, a caring approach to business by Pillar Nonprofit Network. I am your host and regular road tripper, Mariam Waliji. I also act as the Vice President of Impact, Equity, and Governance, and was previously the Social Enterprise Program Manager and Coach here at Pillar. For those of you who are new here, Pollinating Purpose is a show about supporting organizations who seek to create social impact through their work. Whether nonprofit, for-profit, or grassroots organization, you'll learn key considerations to starting or growing your social purpose business. Today, we will be chatting with the wonderful and dynamic Mystery Furtado. Mystery is a dedicated founder and entrepreneur, renowned as the driving force behind Type Diabeat It, a nonprofit organization based here in London. This remarkable initiative is steadfast in its support for low-income, racialized, and marginalized communities living with diabetes. Mystery's journey towards creating Type Diabeat It was ignited during her tenure as a clinical educator at St. Thomas Hospital. It was there she recognized the significant gaps in services and care, particularly for those who looked like her when accessing diabetes support. Committed to making a difference, Type Diabeat It not only offers support, but also cultivates ethnic food distributed throughout the city and conducts food literacy programming. Beyond this, Mystery initiated the first Black-led community garden in London, serving as a beacon of empowerment. As a single mother of two remarkable boys, Mystery takes immense pride in her role as a parent and the legacy she's building. Her dedication and impact were recognized when she received the 20 in her 20s award in the City of London in 2021. Mystery's advocacy for community health and well-being remains steadfast, and her work has made a substantial impact on the London community. Notably, she is a proud recipient of the TD Zone grant and is an active Pillar member, exemplifying her commitment to creating positive change. Hi, Mystery.
Hi, Miriam. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. Thanks for joining us. You just came from a school program.
I did.
So thank you for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Truly, anytime I get to chat with you is a delight.
Absolutely.
Okay, so can you share a little bit about Type Diabeat It for the folks who might not be familiar with the organization?
Sure. So Type Diabeat It, we're a non-for-profit based out of London. We support low-income, racialized, and marginalized communities who have diabetes, and we do this through food. We believe that food is an empowerment tool and also a way to manage and prevent type 2 diabetes specifically. So we focus mostly on type 2. And we grow ethnic produce that goes back into the community. And we also teach them how to cook this produce because type 2 is very much linked to lifestyle, genetic predisposition for people of color. So we grow a lot of Afrocentric Caribbean food groups and also foods or vegetables that intersect with like Middle Eastern communities, Latin community, and Asian because food is universal.
Yeah, amazing. And so what inspired you to start Type Diabeat It?
My grandmother. So growing up, she had type 2 diabetes. And I was giving her insulin at a very early age. So I think it was about 8 or 9. And I was the only one at home. And I offered to give her injection because she needed it. And then I became her full-time nurse because she said my hands were lighter than her daughter's.
Oh.
And so I grew up, and I lost both my paternal and maternal grandparents to diabetes. So it's something that I grew up seeing and understanding how hard it is, not only for the person that has it, but the entire family. And specifically when my grandma used to come and visit me here, I remember how hard she made us work to find specific foods. So at the time, my kid's dad, he had to be driving all over London, sometimes to Toronto, to find things that she wanted, right?
Right.
She was in her 60s. You can't tell them just to eat whatever, right?
Yeah.
So, those are my core reasons for getting involved. and I say this all the time, I wanted to only support Belize because diabetes is ranked top 3 cause of death. But then when I worked as a clinical educator, I realized that there was so much that I could actually do in my new home, which I felt like Canada was perfect. I didn't think that they needed me or, little mystery from Belize to get involved.
Yeah.
But then in my role as a clinical educator, I realized, wow, like there's a lot of gaps in service, in resources, right, for people that look like me. So we started with 4 roles at the food bank.
Nice. Yeah. And, we both have connections to food organizations with my work with Urban Roots and the work that you're doing with Type Diabeat It. And yeah, that piece around, like getting your grandmother the food that she wants, like food is so connected to so many things, experience and also joy and culture and, finding culturally appropriate food for folks to really enable them to care for themselves in all the ways that care means through food, I think is such like an important piece. And yeah, it's really beautiful to see the way that you've done that through Type Diabeat It, and not just like education, but really weaving in food and access into that as well.
Because what we do is also reducing some of those stereotypes around what is healthy and what's not healthy, right?
Yes.
I always find that whenever you talk about certain cultural foods, predominantly like African and Caribbean food, there's this misconception that our food is not healthy. And everyone automatically, it's like an elephant walked in the room and they only think of exotic animals. Like I've had people ask me, oh, do you guys eat monkeys and like elephants and like really ignorant statements? Oh yeah, in Canada. And that's what people think when they hear, these denominations and what they think we eat. But in actuality, Africa has over 100 ancient grains that were found in Egyptian tombs. So this is BC, before Christ, if you listen to that type of stuff, right? Yeah. And, longest standing history, people being vegan, people being plant-based. So like what I'm doing is, yes, like very much high level diabetes management and prevention, but also empowerment. So you understand what is healthy. Yeah. Understand that our food has been influenced by slavery and westernization, right?
Yeah.
What did we really eat? What was the staple? Yeah. So through growing the food and educating on how to cook it, you're putting tools into people's hands who thought that's not healthy because my doctor said get a Middle Eastern diet, right? Or get a Greek diet. And these are such blanket statements that can be so misleading and also like contributes to you feeling not healthy, and also like the financial piece. Yeah. Empowering families to know that health doesn't have to be expensive. So most of the recipes are under $20.
Amazing. Yeah. And, going back to that piece around like, food can be expensive, and also like the information privilege as well, right? I think you and I talked about it. Someone showing up at a food bank and, receiving something like rutabaga or, spaghetti squash and not knowing what to do with it. It can be really overwhelming, and you need to take the time and the resources to figure out how to turn that into a healthy meal versus, being able to access something that you culturally know and you know how to work with. You can just use it in different ways that allows you to kind of, take care of yourself in different ways.
I agree.
Yeah. I agree. Amazing. Okay. And so, talking about Type Diabeat It, what are some of the challenges and barriers that you've experienced while trying to do this work that you're embarking on?
That is a very good question. Well, I would say a lot of barriers, and on different levels. So on one hand, you're having hard conversation as an equity group, trying to explain why you're doing what you're doing. Yeah. Right? Because people go, well, there's all these, growing programs. There's all this food available. What are you doing? Why do we have to have something just for a set group of people that's, that's exclusive and all this? And then you have to...
How is it different? Yeah.
So then you have to find a way to control your emotions and talk about facts and explain to them or remind them of what statistics is saying quite opposite to what you're saying. And I have to say, well, not because it's available means it's accessible. Exactly. And availability is not equity, right? So that is why I'm doing what I'm doing, because there's a lot of people that look like me that fall in the gaps and are not accessing resources as they should, or support services for a multitude of reasons, right? Yeah. And then having hard conversations around change, around equity, around racial biases, around systematic racism and systematic biases in health, right? And trying to redirect them to read what's being put out by Canada Statistics, by Toronto medical schools about, racism in health and all these systematic barriers, whether it's intentional or unintentional, right? Like these are things that exist. And some people, because they're up here providing support, they don't really understand how that trickles into the community. Yeah. And because I work directly in the community, right? I'm not like providing service from here. I'm in the community, running the sessions, giving out the food. I'm interacting with the people, so I'm able to see more than someone who's up here setting the policies and the rules and all these metrics, because they're not on the ground. So that's a barrier. And then as an equity-seeking group, again, working within my own community sometimes can be challenging, because I find that in London specifically, we've been fed this scarcity mentality that there's not enough to go around. Right. So sometimes collaborating with other Black-led organizations have been very difficult. And that is because there's a lot of trauma, there's a lot of healing, right? There's that whole token mentality that I benefit from being the only Black organization or only Black person in this space. I cannot welcome somebody else into the space because that's intimidating, right? So you find that that's a whole nother conversation, not on the community side, but on the leadership side, trying to get them to understand that we can work together, that we should not continue to perpetuate these colonial stereotypes that we can't work together, and that there's not enough for all of us to be able to work along with or to be able to collaborate, because we're in here to help, right? So, those are, that's a lot.
Yeah,
right?
A lot.
And just the daily conversations that are sometimes very, very hard to have. Right?
Yeah. And have you found ways to navigate either one of those barriers? Like the piece around having the hard conversations with kind of those higher levels and the folks removed from the work, but then also, with your own community?
So what I've been able to do is, one, I don't take anything personal, right? Because we're all leading from a place of experience, a place of pain sometimes. And when I look at my community, it's not their fault, right? Yeah. These are systems that have been in place that keep us in certain mentality and in certain modes, right? So I've been able to just take really good advice from the people around me and articulate facts and not emotions, right? Don't take things personal. And have conversations and allow things to not work out and give it time to work out, right? Yeah. Because again, like I said, it's not their fault, and we're here to do a higher purpose, it's the community. And then when it comes to higher up level, just finding a way to communicate, or taking somebody with me, or having someone that they already respect, do the introduction. But right now we're at a point whereby we're not having those issues as much because the trust has been established, which again, within the Black community, we have a lot of non-trusting relationship with healthcare providers with support, and rightfully so, right? So we've been able to build that credibility in the community. So now it's most of the hard conversations and just walking in, understand that, okay, we might hear something really, really ignorant today, but it's okay. And we're going to find a way to educate. And we work with like resource centers and other organizations that have similar mission or are open to the hard conversations, right? They're willing to collaborate. Like this summer, we did over 500 meals working with LUSO and Northwest Resource Centers, right? So not everything is bad. And I think the key point for us is just to keep working even though nobody's looking, right? Yeah. And that was one of the earliest advice that I was given. It's like, don't wait for someone to see you. Just keep doing the work, and people are going to see that you're here for all the right reasons. And we kept working. Right? We kept working. We had 4 roles, and then we got a greenhouse, and now we're moving into 1.5 acres of land.
Amazing.
Right? Like we're just constantly growing, and it's because we have that mentality as an organization. We're going to keep working, Even if, we don't get the clout or the pats on the back or all the media recognitions, we know who we serve. The people know us. We're in the community. We're in the schools. Like people know me now, right?
Yeah.
So that's a big part of the work, and that gives you the energy to have these conversations, right? So
yeah, and maybe you've kind of touched on it a little bit, but as you've just kind of shared, you and Type Diabeat It as an organization, you have a really strong network of support within the community. And can you share a little bit about your approach to building that network and those relationships?
I think it's the mindset that together we're stronger, right? Unity is big for us. And because we're volunteer-led, we rarely ever have the budget or the resources to do anything.
Yeah.
Okay, we are broke. Like there's no prettying it up. Okay.
Yeah.
So for us to get anything done, it's always been to community partners. Since the first row with the food bank, right? They gave us the plot of land. They had we worked it. We provide the labor, the knowledge, the expertise, but it was in support, right? And then as we grow, like I'm here at Pillar. Amazing network of people who have sent emails on my behalf, who helped me to open those doors, right? Some of the resource centers, they're willing to collaborate. They're happy to have built this relationship over time. I work at London Intercommunity Health Center. We run a program for seniors every month, free of charge. So we've been able to maintain when they understand that we're here to collaborate. It's not about Type Diabeat It or you, is what we've been able to do collaboratively.
Yeah.
And recently I had a meeting with a city councilor, and it didn't start off very well. She was not listening to me. And, I think just this maybe thinking I'm here to be aggressive or angry or, it was such a weird meeting. And then in the end, it's like, so like, what are you asking for? And I said, well, I'm not here for money. I'm here to know, who do you know? Right?
Yeah.
I want you to know what I'm doing because you're in a position to give this to the right person.
Yeah.
And then she goes, oh, and I was like, I don't want anything. I just want you to be aware because you're in a position of influence and I'd like to know who you know.
Yeah.
Because maybe somebody in your network is looking for what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And that's always my approach. Like, what can we do together? Do you have a budget? Okay, well, I can provide this, I can provide that, right?
Yeah.
And that has led us to a point that we got our first big funding from United Way. We put in an application, and because of the work we've been doing, right, with the roles, with the greenhouse, to say, hey, we can benefit from having a space to actually process the food continuously and not just rely on community partners to run our programs, right? Yeah. So we got funded for a BPOC-led kitchen. And now we're running our own internal, sessions on a regular basis and maintaining collaborations. So our feeding program today at JP2 is with Luso, and the kids get to cook and they get to eat. And we feature ethnic foods. So like today we did millet, which is an ancient grain, and we made it as a porridge because it's pretty cold. So they got to add bananas, honey, cinnamon, a little bit of milk. And that they've never had that before, and that is it has a lot of fiber, it has a lot of minerals, antioxidant. Like millet is a great grain, and it's better than like regular like white rice or potatoes, and it's affordable. So a small 500-gram bag fed like 20 kids. Yeah, and it costs less than $5.
Yeah. And, as you kind of speak around the way that you approach relationship building, I'm really hearing that it's about that, reciprocal and mutual relationship, right? It's not about like, oh, how can you benefit me? But that piece of like, what can we do together and how can we support each other? Like that ecosystem approach where not one organization can be everything. Yeah. So how can you kind of leverage the strengths that you have to lift each other up? Right?
Yes.
And continue to keep doing that and then, bringing people alongside and doing all of those beautiful things.
That's how we've grown because like these resource centers or entities have a budget, have money, have staff, right? They're funded. They've been around for 20, 30, 50 years, right? Yeah. So then it's a little bit easier for them. So once we're able to work together, we have a greater impact because I'm going to be able to pull out people that might not necessarily come because they don't feel welcome or they don't see a familiar face. And it's being willing to have those conversations to see that we bring value to whatever you have, and together we can make it so much better, because we've gotten into this habit of being very inclusive and diverse on paper. So every time we have inclusivity, diversity, these are like really great buzzwords on paper. But do we ever step back to see if the people we serve really feel that way? Are the numbers reflective of inclusivity and diversity? Are we being intentful in our service, in our language, in the environment that we're creating? And it's being able to say that sometimes there is barriers to accessing your service, even if it's great, because there's great programs out there. But again, when you're in the work, sometimes you lose perspective or lens, right? And once we're able to be okay with that it's not your fault, we're not blaming you, and we come together collaboratively, we're able to do really, really great work. Like our program right now with Luso, it's growing. We have a small classroom and we do both lunch, like we do the senior and the junior lunch. And the kids come out on their own time, sit down, we talk, we analyze the recipes. And we're doing, I got the kids to have mushrooms, plantain and mushroom tacos. It's like a hit.
That sounds great.
Yeah, and it is so good, right? And having them eat beans and things that are affordable, right? And, you know, they go home thinking, wow, I don't have to like go out and buy asparagus. I can have plantains, I can have, you know, okras, I can have things that I know, and just a little bit of tweak, right? And I get them to reduce sugar, which is always a fight everywhere I go. Everybody wants sugar. They're like, sorry, Karen, but sugar. Like, no sugar, right? No extra salt. So I was asking them today, I said, so what, you know, what have you tried what am I bringing? Like, what can you say you enjoy that I've brought to the program? They're like, well, you're making us eat healthy with no sugar. And they're all like rolling their eyes. They're like, well, it's good, right? So teaching them that there's other things that you can really enjoy, right? So it's really fun.
And going back to what you were saying around spaces and being a trusted community member to kind of almost be that like vetting voice to say, hey, we're doing this in collaboration with this other organization. You maybe don't have trust in that organization, and I hear you, and that's valid. And here's me saying that, like, I will also be there. So I can be, you know, that vetting voice to say, you know, we're working on things to make sure that it can be what you need it to be. Because I think you're right. You know, we talk a lot about inclusive spaces, but we aren't as clear around what belonging in that space means, right? And so showing up and feeling a sense of belonging, and not, you know, it's not that sense of like, oh, you're welcome here, but it's actually you belong here. And it's two very, very different approaches and two very different, it's also a different amount of work to create belonging versus, you know, creating a sense of inclusivity.
And it's very hard. And I feel that, again, we get caught up in these words. And I recently mentioned to a group that it's nice that a chair was created for me, right? It's nice that I have a seat, but just creating a seat does not mean that I feel welcome. It does not mean that you guys are inclusive. Just because you have a face and a chair for an equity-seeking person, that's not how this works. We still have much more work to do. And I mean that the first step is nice, but we have to talk about it. So, you know, I also use my role to try to encourage other equity-seeking groups to voice these things and, you know, just not accept it because it's not okay, because we have to create a passage or a motivation for the younger generation to want to get involved, right? Why would they want to get involved in a system that is so hard to navigate? So it really starts with us to really carve a different path. I'm always asked, what is innovative? What is new? I said, partnership, collaboration, that's innovative. Communicating is innovative. And they're like, I was like, that's innovative in itself. Being able to work together and understand what we play collectively to the people that we serve.
Absolutely. As we start to kind of wrap up, you know, how do you hope to see the community change? And, you know, how can community support you in the change that you're hoping to create?
Well, I think the change starts off always with being receptive and being open, right? Rome was not built in a day. And what I want to see more of is the willingness to have the conversation. Is the willingness to understand that there's still more that I can learn and that I don't know everything. And that even goes for myself, as a leader, as a community activist, is walking into spaces and having people be okay with not knowing. And I think that's great. And that is something that I've been able to have really great conversations everywhere that I've been going in different settings, that people going, wow, I never thought of it that way. Oh, Mystery, thank you. You gave me a new perspective. My doctor did say that, right? So that's what I want. Let us, be more intentful about the words that we're saying. And as leaders in spaces that provide service, don't think that you're without bias sometimes. And let's try to be much more intentful, not just on paper. So those are things that I hope to see across the board. And to support us, you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Type Diabeat It. We have a website where we post all our activities. We're getting ready to develop the 1.5 acres of land. So we're going to be launching our phase 2 proposal. So just look at our website, follow us on social media, send us an email. We're always looking for volunteers because we're primary volunteer-led. And I want to know what you're doing. Maybe we can do something together,
Yeah, and I mean, if you're in London, Mystery's always popping in around to Innovation Works. So, come grab a coffee. See ya.
My space.
Amazing. Okay, well, thank you so much, Mystery, for sharing and, for doing the work that you do. I mean, obviously, I have my bias and that I think it's incredible, but I think it's a fair point too.
I'm so glad that you invited me, and I'm happy to come back.
Anytime. Thanks, Mystery.
No problem.
Thank you once again to Mystery for joining us. If you would like to learn more about Pillar Nonprofit Network and the work that we're doing at this organization, you can head on over to pillarnonprofit.ca. For more information on Type Diabeat It, you can visit their website at www.typediabeatit.ca. So that is diabeat-it.ca. Or you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram at Type Diabeat It. In addition to her nonprofit work, Mystery also has a social enterprise called Grinding Peas. This venture pays homage to her late grandmother, Rose Zacharias Palacio, and her deep-rooted passion for holistic health. Once again, I am your host, your guide, your business bud, Miriam Willie, and this has been Pollinating Purpose, a caring approach to business with Pillar Nonprofit Network. Thank you for coming along for the ride. I'm happy that you're here.